I gotta say, this is one for the record books, I'm telling you. One of the greatest collections of songs we've ever had on this show. I know I say that a lot, but truly. Coming up, I'm counting down the top 10 songs of a year, so full of classics. I'm not kidding. I could have done 5 different top 10s and all would have been great. Including a song that's become such a cultural sing-along for us that we the fans have created our own lyrics to the chorus. Then another one that was the #1 song of the year, but decades later, nobody knows who really sang it because it was an imaginary band. Then there's a classic record where the main word in the title was misspelled and nobody caught it. So millions of sales and decades later, it still hasn't been fixed. And then there's a band that had half a dozen songs hit #2, but they never got to #1. You're going to be shocked when you find out who it is. Next up, we have so many legends with us to tell the stories behind the greatest songs ever. Let's see if you can guess the year. It's coming up on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember borrowing some quarters from your parents to play a couple songs on the jukebox back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button and click the bell so you always know when our stuff comes out. Also, make sure to go to ProfessorofRock.com, our 24-hour music channel there. Got some great stuff going on there, ProfessorofRock.com. All right, take your guesses in the comments. We'll see if you can guess what the top 10 or what the year is for today's top 10. I'll give you a couple of clues here. Richard Nixon was sworn in as president of the United States. The Vietnam War was raging. Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon, and the first message was delivered on a mysterious futuristic medium called the internet. Talking about the year 1969. And the music of that year was immaculate. This is one of the best years of music, so chock full of classics. Half the countdown could have been filled with hits by CCR. The other half could have been filled with the Beatles or the Stones. So let's do it. Our countdown of the top 10 songs of 1969 begins with one of the sweetest pieces of ear candy ever put to vinyl. Number 10, I got Sugar Sugar by the Archies. Sugar. Oh, honey, honey. Hey, it influenced Def Leppard to write Pour Some Sugar on Me. One of the most successful bubblegum pop songs of the 60s, Sugar Sugar was released to take advantage of the immensely popular comic book series and animated TV show, The Archies.
Okay, everybody, here we go with our new hit record, Sugar Sugar!
Love Archie. I read the comics all the time still. It's written by Jeff Barry, who co-wrote countless other hits, including The Do Ron Ron and Be My Baby, and of course Andy Kim, who was also a performer. I don't know if you remember Rock Me Gently, the #1 smash, it would peak in 74.
Rock me gently, rock me slowly, take it.
The lead vocal was performed by the multi-talented Ron Dante, who had a great success as a studio musician, a writer, and producer. In fact, he had 2 songs in the top 10 the same week when Sugar Sugar was at #1, and nobody knew who he was. I actually sat down with Ron in Hollywood to get the story behind the irresistible Sugar Sugar. Here's what he told me about it. The only time in Billboard history, and still the only time that a fictional group had the #1 song of the year.
Because it's not perfect, it sounds great.
Candy girl, and you got me wanting you.
Well, was it hard being anonymous? Because here you have the biggest song of the year, everybody's playing it.
It wasn't difficult at all. By then I was a pro.
Yeah.
I was doing jingle sessions, singing commercials every day. I was doing backgrounds for other people. I was used to being anonymous, but it was my business. It was my craft. I just wanted to sing. And I just loved singing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And it was after every session, I'd listen back and I'd say, Dad, I had a lot of fun doing this. I actually got paid to do this.
Yeah.
You know.
Imagine being the vocalist on the #1 song of the week and also having another top 10 in the same week and nobody knew who you were. That's crazy. Sugar Sugar by the fictional cartoon band The Archies. It rocketed to #1 in 17 countries around the globe, including Mexico, Canada, the UK, and here in the US. It's actually the #1 song of the year.
Sugar. Oh, honey, honey.
All right, moving along with our top 10 songs, our 69 countdown. At number 9, I got the soulful jazzy rock of a band with a song that was a crossover hit on 3 major charts. It brought in the horns, baby. I'm talking about Spin and Wheel by Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Ride a painted pony, let the spinning wheel turn.
So check this out. Blood, Sweat, and Tears suddenly became one of the biggest bands in the world. The only group to have 3 straight #2 hits. Their album hit #1, and it beat the Beatles' Abbey Road for Album of the Year at the Grammys. And then at their peak, they were banned from touring in America because the US government wouldn't give their singer a green card. So Big Brother allegedly blackmailed the band that they would give the singer the green card if the band would tour behind the Iron Curtain.
Would you mind a reflecting sign?
Their hot streak from 68 through 70 was partly because of that singer, David Clayton Thomas, one of the most powerful vocalists of the rock era. And covering this story, here's what drummer Bobby Colomby told me about it.
Our singer was Canadian. We were talking out against the war. Some right-wing congressman or something happened where the government took away his green card. And with the #1 record, we can't play in America anymore. We're done. So all of a sudden, the State Department appears. It may have been our manager de jour's idea, or it may have been the State Department knowing that they had something dangling. And they said, if you do this tour behind the Iron Curtain to kind of, be our little, our gift to these 3 countries, Yugoslavia and Romania and Poland, then we'll try and get you back the green card with a wink. And we knew if we told anyone why we were doing this, they would take the green card away again. So we couldn't say anything. Now understand, the extreme left is thinking they're doing a State Department sponsored tour. They're tools of the government.
Let the spinning wheel fly.
Coming in at #8 on our top 1969 countdown here. One of the biggest comebacks in the rock era by none other than the king of rock and roll himself, Mr. Elvis Presley, with Suspicious Minds.
Why can't you see what you're doing?
Now, we talked about this recently. Elvis was walking down the hall of American Sound Studios in Memphis, and he heard a rehearsal session for the song Suspicious Minds going on. And he knew right away he wanted that song. He knew it instantly. He knew it would take him back to the top of the charts. Now, he burst into the studio and he yelled out, "I want that song and I want those girls." Now, Mark James, who had written the song, was there with Mary Jeannie Green, Ginger Holiday, and Mary Holiday's sisters. They were recording the demo, and who could say no to Elvis? He got exactly what he wanted. Suspicious Minds was a return to glory for the king. For that, he hadn't had a U.S. #1 hit since Good Luck Charm back in 1962.
A good luck charm hanging on my arm.
Long 7 years. For most of the 60s, he was stuck making a bunch of forgettable movies, and his music hadn't had any fire in it. And Elvis's career went on the up and up after that. Suspicious Minds went to #1 and put him back on top.
With suspicious minds.
I can't walk out. Oh, I love that song. We're counting down the top 10 songs in 1969. And it coming in at #7 is arguably the most beloved sing-along song in recorded music history. I tell you, when you sing Sweet Caroline by the great Neil Diamond, good times never seem so good. It's one of the only hit songs in history where we, the fans, have added our own lyrics. So good, so good, so good, right?
Seems so good.
Now, the inspiration for Sweet Caroline rushed to Neil while staying at a hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee. It's when he spotted a magazine photo of President John F. Kennedy's daughter, Caroline Kennedy, who was about 7 years old at that time. On this magazine cover, young Caroline was dressed in riding gear, standing beside her pony with a big smile on her face. Now, something about the innocence of that moment stuck with Neil Diamond, and he knew there was a song in this.
Where it began.
The other serendipitous thing about Caroline is that Neil needed a name with 3 syllables. Now, he originally had his wife in mind, as the muse for the song, but her name was Marcia, and it wasn't going to flow well. But Caroline, with the magical 3 syllables, fit perfectly within the cadence of the song that Neil was drafting. Neil, knew he had something special the moment the song came to him. He said, the minute it did come out of me, I knew it was special. It had deeper meaning beyond just commercial success. Most songs take planning and thought. Sweet Caroline, it had none of that. It just happened. Neil's words. In about 30 minutes, Neil Diamond had finished the lyrics for Sweet Caroline and was all ready to be taken to the studio to turn it into a pop culture phenomenon. Neil Diamond kept the secret of Sweet Caroline for 40-something years. He was waiting for the right moment to share it with Caroline Kennedy herself that he'd written it for her. He'd never discussed it with anybody before that. You think about it, this song is a bigger mystery than You're So Vain. It's just nobody really knew about it. I guess they just thought Caroline was, just a made-up name for the song. So Neil did this intentionally, though. He told the Associated Press in 2007, "I thought maybe I'd tell Caroline when I met her someday." And that moment finally came when he performed for Caroline's 50th birthday party via satellite. Now, she was shocked. She could not believe it. Neil said, "I'm glad I finally got it off my chest and I had the chance to tell her." She was very pleased. Neil Diamond has referred to Sweet Caroline as the most important song of his storied career, and he's written so many great songs. It's taken over stadiums across the world. Neil was ecstatic about the single being a number 3 hit in Australia and Canada and number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. But more than 5 decades later, it's blossomed into one of the most recognized songs in popular music history.
Sweet Caroline.
Love that song. So getting back to the countdown, another feel-good classic came out during that amazing year in music, coming in at number 6 on our countdown to the top of 69. I got Hot Fun in the Summertime by Sly and the Family Stone. I'm telling you, this is one of the catchiest songs ever. Those summer days, having hot fun in the summertime song. The opening piano riff on that wonderful Sly and the Family Stone treasure brings instant euphoria, I'm telling you. The volume immediately goes up and you're ready for the good times to roll.
End of the spring, and here she comes back.
All 7 members of Sly and the Family Stone came together for the chorus of Hot Fun in the Summertime, creating that signature layered sound that we all love. Lead vocals are shared with Sly and Rose Stone, joined by guitarist Freddie Stone and bassist Larry Graham, each taking turn on the verses. Even the horn section gets a moment to shine on this one. Saxophonist Jerry Martini and trumpet player Cynthia Robinson. It has strings. Actually, Cynthia Robinson, one of the few female horn players in a major hit-making band. They just made their presence felt. It was written to be released during the summer, but Sly took so long to get it done. It came out at the end of summer in August. It peaked at number 3 on the Billboard R&B chart, went to number 6 in Canada, and it went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. That happened in the late fall. Onward, or really downward, we're counting down the top 10 songs of 1969. Halfway through the countdown at number 5, it's one of the coolest songs of the rock era. I know you're going to agree with me here. I Got Time of the Season by the Zombies. Time of the Season is driven by its hypnotic bass line, which sets the tone right from the intro. What makes this song stand out are its unique structural elements that have helped it stand the test of time.
Time of the season.
Speaking of the bass riff, it's accented by a crisp hand clap and a breathy vocal, adding depth and texture to it. Plus, they were the first band to use the term "Who's Your Daddy?"
What's your name? Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?
Here's what the band told me about this classic.
What's your name? Who's your daddy? That brought that into the popular lingo. Who's your dad?
I can't believe that, but that's, someone from a big sports program. There was a Super Bowl on or something, and they said, we're playing it tonight. They said, because we've looked back, and the first time we can hear that Who's Your Daddy has ever been used, was in Time of the Season.
Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? Is he rich like me?
So, it's the first time I heard somebody say that. But really, I mean, that song, it was the last song to be written on Odyssey and Oracle. And Chris and I were sharing a flat. I quite believe that Chris can't remember this, but I remember having written that last song and playing it to him and saying, I think this could be a hit. And no one else seemed to sort of share that feeling at the time, but I like the simplicity of it. I just like the whole feeling of it. I like the fact that it introduced some left field improvisation on it.
This song, of course, came from the classic album Odyssey and Oracle, except that Odyssey was misspelled on the cover, which was the result of a mistake by the designer of the LP cover, Terry Quirk. Now, the band tried to cover this up over time when it was released, claiming the misspelling was actually intentional, but it wasn't, and it's never been corrected. The Rod Argent pen track Time of the Season rose to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It went to number 2 in South Africa, and went all the way to number 1 in Canada. Next up on our countdown is one of those magical double A-side collections by the lads from Liverpool. They have plenty of them. I'm going to give it to the double A-side on this thing as a whole. The combination of Come Together and Something by the Beatles is at number 4.
Come together right now. Don't want to leave her now. You know I believe.
In a 1980 interview with Playboy, John Lennon admitted that Come Together was basically gobbledygook. Just words that came together in the studio. He explained that the phrase actually came from psychologist Timothy Leary, who was running an improbable campaign for governor of California against Ronald Reagan about this time. I guess Timothy had asked John Lennon to write him a campaign song, and he gave it a shot. But after numerous attempts, nothing solid came of it. Said he ended up with Come Together, which, as he put it, would have been no good to him. You couldn't have a campaign song like that, right? After Timothy Leary passed on using the song for his campaign, which is incredible to me, how would you pass on that? Lennon threw in some off-the-wall lyrics and he brought it to the Abbey Road sessions. Paul McCartney later recalled saying, "Let's slow it down with a swampy bass and drums vibe." Sir Paul came up with a bass line and it all flowed from there. The whispered lyric, "This sounds like shoot," that's actually Lennon saying shoot me, followed by a hand clap that, and the bass line is what drowns out the me. So if you listen to it, you can hear it. The Beatles recorded Come Together on July 21st, 1969, marking the first session John Lennon took part in after he and Yoko were in a car accident 3 weeks earlier. John was so determined to have Yoko by his side that he arranged for a hospital bed to be set up in the studio for her right after the accident, since she'd been more seriously injured than he was in the mishap. The story behind Something is even greater. The flip side of the double A side is quite different from his vinyl cousin, though. It was a rare single written and sung by George Harrison. The song is often regarded as a love song dedicated to Pattie Boyd, George Harrison's first wife. But in later interviews, George hinted that there were other inspirations behind the song as well. At the time, Harrison was struggling to get more than a couple of his songs onto each Beatles album. In fact, he had hundreds of songs that had been rejected by the band, so he actually initially offered Something to Joe Cocker. However, the Beatles ended up recording it, and the result became a standout track. I think the standout track on Abbey Road, a #1 smash, with its haunting melody and its gorgeous guitar solo. Many music critics have since held it as one of George's finest moments on the guitar. Even the other Beatles and their producer George Martin were impressed by this song. John Lennon in particular went as far as saying it was the best song in the album, and I agree with that. The opening lyric is Something. Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover.
Attracts me like no other lover.
That was inspired by the title of Something in the Way She Moves. That was a song by James Taylor, another artist who recorded for the Apple Records label.
And I feel fine anytime she's around me now.
So George kind of, stole that. While George Harrison imagined the song in the style of Ray Charles, the real heart came from the love that he felt for his wife.
Something in her style that shows me.
The double A-side of Come Together in Something was, of course, another mega single for the Beatles, moving to number 4 in the UK and number 1 in many countries, including Germany, Belgium, Australia, and here in the US on the Billboard Hot 100. The single itself sold 2 million units. There's another potent double A-side that comes in at number 3 and beats the Beatles by 1. Man, from the greatest bridesmaid artists ever, and they could have made up half the countdown, I'm telling you. 69 was a big year for Creedence Clearwater Revival. They had 5 number 2 hits. They never got to number 1. Here we celebrate the 1-2 punch of Down on the Corner and Fortunate Son.
Down on the corner, out in the street, playing the po-po. It ain't me, I ain't no fortunate one.
Early in the evening, just about supper time, that's when they started to unwind, as John Fogerty put it in Down on the Corner.
Early in the evening, just about supper time.
This was John's spirited tribute to a fictitious band named Willie and the Poor Boys. John revealed that Down on the Corner was mostly inspired by an ad he saw in the morning newspaper. Get this, it was a Disney ad, and it had the words Winnie the Pooh in big letters. Something clicked in his mind, and he thought Winnie the Pooh and the Pooh Boys. Of course, that eventually morphed into Willie and the Poor Boys. Can you imagine if it would have been Willie and the Pooh Boys? So as he played around with the idea, it started to take shape into a song in that strange, almost magical way that music often comes to great songwriters.
You don't need a penny just to hang around. But if you...
Now, John went on to share in an interview that Winnie the Pooh had always been his favorite character, one that he's cherished with his daughter Kelsey since she was born. Though she's grown out of it, for John, it's still going strong. Now, on the flip side of CCR's Fortunate Son is all about the cold, hard reality of wartime America during the Vietnam War era.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag.
Oh man, Fortunate Son became an anthem of defiance, channeling blue-collar pride while taking aim at both Washington and the Vietnam War, the senators, the uppity-ups, the rich.
It ain't me, I ain't no senator's son.
The song's raw energy and rebellious spirit reflected the frustration of many who felt trapped by the system. John Fogerty and Doug Clifford, both members of CCR, had first-hand experience with the military draft. 1966, they enlisted in the Army Reserves to avoid being sent to Vietnam, fulfilling their military commitments before being discharged in 1968. Now, John later explained that the song was less about the war itself and more about the class divide. He said it speaks more to the unfairness of class. It's the old saying about rich men making war and poor men having to fight them. Man, it's truer now than it ever was.
Some folks are born silver spoon in hand. Lord, don't they?
In essence, Fortunate Son wasn't just a protest song against the war. It was a critique of a system where the privileged were insulated from the harsh realities that the less fortunate had to face. Something, like I said, that has not changed at all since that song came out, unfortunately. John Fogerty wrote one of the best songs ever here. The double A-side of Fortunate Son and Down on the Corner was one of 7 top 5 singles by John Fogerty and Creedence Clearwater Revival in a very short period. The double single worked its way to number 2 in Germany, Denmark, and Belgium, and crested at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100.
I ain't no fortunate one.
We're jamming all the way to number 2 here on the top 10 songs of 1969, and it's a track by one of America's hottest musical acts of that year, Mr. Tommy James and the Shondells. Now, they had a big hit with Crimson and Clover for sure. Perfect as that song is, though, I'm going to piss a lot of people off. I got to give the nod to Crystal Blue Persuasion as the number 2 song of 69.
Crystal Blue Persuasion.
Tommy James was at the peak of his songwriting brilliance in this time when he collaborated with Eddie Gray and Mike Vell to compose the new vibration, Crystal Blue Persuasion.
It's a new vibration. Crystal Blue.
This song brilliantly blends a sense of earthly intoxication with a deeper universal spirituality, creating something truly extraordinary.
Look over yonder.
I have such a great love for Crystal Blue Persuasion and Crimson and Clover for that matter. I was very excited to hear about these songs from Tommy. Here's what he said.
We did our first Ed Sullivan show, And that was a scary moment. You know, they wanted us to do Crimson and Clover live. Well, you knew that was a train wreck waiting to happen. I mean, there's no way these guys were going to get the fade and everything. So I begged them to let me do a lip sync. A fan down in Atlanta at a college we were working brought me a poem called Crystal Persuasion. And back then, you know, we're always looking for titles. And so I loved this Crystal Persuasion. We needed an extra syllable. So I put in the word blue, and it became Crystal Blue Persuasion.
Crystal Blue Persuasion.
Crystal Blue Persuasion is a bond that I share with my dad. He told me that he got to choose the prom theme for that year that he graduated. And he chose Crystal Blue Persuasion. It's such a song of peace and just good vibrations. Crystal Blue Persuasion by Tommy James and the Shondells ascended to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, holding that position for 3 weeks. It just could not shake in the year 2525 by Zager and Evans. But it did reach number 1 in Canada.
Crystal Blue Persuasion.
Now, when you reflect on all the great songs that came out in 1969, I'm wondering if you had a hunch about what we would choose for the number 1 spot. Another just very difficult but fun challenge that I had. At number 1 on the countdown, I'm going with a song that we need more than ever in this moment, in this divided world right now. It's Jesse Colin Young and the band The Youngbloods with the iconic classic, Get Together. You know, when Get Together began to captivate a generation in 1969, it was actually a reissue. It was originally released in 1967. First time around, the song stiffed at number 62 on the Billboard Hot 100, but 2 years later, when it was featured in a TV and radio ad campaign, it really struck a chord with a world that was desperately seeking peace, love, and really, most of all, understanding.
Love is but a song we sing.
Get Together was written by Chet Powers, who went by the stage name of Dino Valenti. The track was brilliantly reinterpreted by the quartet, the Youngbloods, led by frontman Jesse Colin Young. Jesse was working on some new material in Salt Lake City when I had a chance to sit down with him, such a privilege, and talk to him about his version of Get Together and the song's timely resurrection.
So I almost turned around and walked up. I said, I don't want to hear these folk singers. But I didn't. No, I stuck my head in, and there was Buzzy Lenhart on stage. He had a trio, bass and drums, and him playing guitar upside down or something. He's a lefty, playing Get Together. And that song just went right through me. And I ran backstage, and I said, oh man, please, you gotta write the lyrics out for me. Because I wanna play it in the Youngbloods. That was a big day.
Felt like it was meant to be.
Very much so. I think I sensed that Get Together and I would be together until I leave the planet. And
you were supposed to be its messenger for sure. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Oh man, do we seriously need that right now.
Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get.
The chorus, that song is one that defined a generation and still defines a generation. It's ranked as one of the most important of the rock era. Get Together was a lone hit by Jesse Colin Young and the Youngbloods, but it was an indelible one. It was a gold single. It moved to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it ranks number 1 on our countdown of the top 10 songs on 1969. This countdown was the most challenging one yet, but I have to include these 3 honorable mentions from the stellar class of 69. I got Son of a Preacher Man by Dusty Springfield.
The only one who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man.
That one barely missed the top 10. I got Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones. And Billboard Magazine's second best-selling single from the year, Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In by the Fifth Dimension.
This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, baby. The sunshine.
Oh man, again, I could have made 5 different top 10s and I'm not kidding. Thanks for watching our latest top 10 countdown. Let me know what your top 10 of 69 are. What are your memories of these songs? What do you think about my picks? Let's have a great discussion. Let's celebrate one of the greatest years in music ever. Just truly, truly great. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community, so if you'll subscribe. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.